Good morning. So we are at the very bottom of Kuf Beis Amud Beis 102b, second to last line. So where are we? Because the Mishnah was discussing the question of when and how one may eat on Erev Shabbos or Yom Tov, with Pesach being more strict, Shabbos and Yom Tov being less strict, and one may eat Shabbos afternoon. So having discussed that, the Gemara went on to discuss what happens if you begin your meal before Shabbos starts, and in the middle of your meal, Shabbos begins. Right? And we had two views, whether you may continue eating and then when you're done, bench and Kiddush, or stop where you are, make Kiddush and bench. Now, because let's focus on Rabbi Yossi, you're benching and Kiddush at the end of your meal. The Gemara asked, why not combine the two on one cup of wine? To which the Gemara responded, well, look, if you can't afford it, fine, use 1 cup of wine. But if you can afford it, then give each mitzvah its due. Don't make them into bundles. Kiddush and Havdallah, however, if Yom Tov is Saturday night, in which case you have Havdallah from Shabbos and Kiddush for the Yom Tov, because both are the same concept, they're both about designating the specialty of the day, therefore you can combine them into 1 cup. And the two views we introduced yesterday was first Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel both agree that you can make Kiddush and Havdallah in 1 cup. The difference only
the order, right?
Is the yeah, 1 second. We didn't introduce Shmuel, I'm sorry. We only had Rav, which said you put Yayin Kiddush near Havdallah. Right, you put Kiddush before Havdallah. Yayin, make the bracha on wine, then make Kiddush, then make the bracha on Meorei Haeish on the flame, then make Havdallah while you're holding 1 cup. And Abaye and Rava agreed with that order. Only that they disputed where you say Shehechiyanu, if it's going to be the first night of Yom Tov, Shehechiyanu right after Kiddush, or Shehechiyanu after Havdallah. If you're like Abaye and you make Shehechiyanu right after Kiddush, it's going to be ykna, yayin, wine, kuf Kiddush, then zman Shehechiyanu, then Havdallah candle, then Havdallah. And Rava says YAKNEHAZ, yayin Kiddush near Havdallah is zman. Okay, so having raised that, now the Gemara is going to get to a number of different views as to what would be the order when you're making Kiddush and Havdallah simultaneously when Yom Tov is Motzei Shabbos, when Yom Tov is Saturday night. Yeah. So I hope I remember all the details, because there's so many different opinions and different details of the order, but I hope I remember everything. Otherwise, we'll have to consult the Rashbam to refresh my memory. Mm-hmm. But let's first lay down the principles. What are the principles here? Well, question 1 is, which one comes first, Kiddush or Havdallah? That's question 1. What would be the two sides of the coin? Well, one view is you put Kiddush first, because if you make Havdallah first, it makes it seem like you can't wait to get rid of Shabbos. So you delay Havdallah for as much as you can. Right? Havdallah closes the day you're leaving, Shabbos, and Kiddush opens the day you're coming into Yom Tov. Now, the day you're coming into Yom Tov is there anyway. Shabbos, one can extend Shabbos even after Shabbos is over.
Oh, that
right?
Makes sense.
So I don't want to indicate that like Shabbos is a burden, I can't wait for it to be over. So therefore I put Havdallah last, which by the way is what you do every Motzei Shabbos. On a regular Motzei Shabbos, you have 4 brachas to make. Bracha on the wine, bracha on the candle, bracha on the psachim, and bracha on Havdallah. You do Havdallah last. You first make on the wine, then you make on psachim, then the ner, then Havdallah. You do Havdallah last because you don't want to demonstrate that you can't wait to get it over. It's a load Shabbos, you want to get it over with. Okay, so that would be the reason to put Havdallah after Kiddush. Yeah. Principle 1. However, on the other hand, another argument is, well, another argument would be put Havdallah first. Why? Because it's not right to introduce the day of Yom Tov, which is a lower holiday, before you've properly escorted the higher Yom Tov, the higher holiness, which is Shabbos. The example is, the Gemara gives this example. I'm quoted: you have a king, you're visiting a king, and then from the king, you're going to visit the minister. So what do? Invite the minister in and then let the king go? No, you first accompany the king to the door, say goodbye, and then you invite the minister in. So from that perspective, put Havdallah first. That's question A. Havdallah first or Kiddush first? The reason for and it really comes down to Havdallah actually. Do I want to put Havdallah last because I don't want to demonstrate? I don't want to make it seem like Shabbos is a burden, and therefore put Havdallah as far to the end as I can? Or no, put Havdallah first because that's going to be more respectful. In other words, what's more respectful to Shabbos? To hold on to it for as long as possible, and therefore even make Havdallah after Kiddush? Or is it more respectful for Havdallah to do it first because close out Shabbos, give it its proper due, and then invite the lower holiday, the lower holiness, which is Yom Tov? Havdallah first or Havdallah last? Question one. Point two is the cup of wine. There's different ways to think about where the cup of wine belongs. One way to think about where the cup of wine belongs is based on the principle that Hillel lays out in the Gemara Brochos. When you have two mitzvahs in front of you, or two items in front of you, one is something that happens more frequently, and one is something that happens less frequently, you first engage in that which is more frequent. So what's more frequent? Yayin, the bracha on a cup of wine, or Kiddush and Havdallah? Of all the brachas here, which one's most frequent? Wine. Because wine isn't just for Kiddush and Havdallah. Wine is for other events also, for benching, for bris. Never mind that you want to drink a glass of wine when you're in the mood of it. But even for the mitzvah-wise, wine happens more often than Kiddush and Havdallah does. Because Kiddush and Havdallah always have wine, plus other mitzvahs that have wine. A bris, a wedding, a benching.
Is it also because you could also do Havdallah on other beverages?
1 second. Actually, Kiddush you can make on bread.
Right.
Havdallah could only be on wine. If you're doing other beverages, you're doing it because you're doing a lesser version of wine, but ostensibly it's on wine. It's actually, Havdallah is more associated with wine than Kiddush, which is going to become relevant also as a pointer.
Oh, understood. I just said there's alternatives.
Yes, but Kiddush actually has more alternatives.
No, for sure.
Kiddush can go farther away from wine than Havdallah can, so which is going to be a factor as well. So this is factor two. This principle that wine being the most frequent should be done first. Another principle here is I want the wine. Do I consider, so from that perspective, I'll put wine first because it's the most frequent. But what happens if I put wine first and I'm of the view that Kiddush has to come before Havdallah? So now, between my wine and my Havdallah, I have two other brachas in the middle. Kiddush and there, the candle. Because the candle is definitely associated with Havdallah. Good morning, no worries. Now, if that's the case, then my wine could be too far from my Havdallah. And my wine should be connected to my Havdallah. So here's the other question. Where to put the wine? Should the wine be at the beginning because it's the most commonly used bracha? Or should the wine be as close as possible to my Havdallah? Right, so far we have two principles. Principle A is which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah? On the one hand, Havdallah should come first because first close out the day, give it its due, and then invite the new day Kiddush. Or Havdallah should come last because I don't want to make as if Shabbos is a load that I want to get rid of, so put Havdallah off as much as possible. Principle one to consider. And principle two to consider is where should wine be? Should wine be first because it's the most commonly made bracha of all of them, and therefore the most commonly one is treated first? Or should wine be put as close as possible to Havdallah? Because actually wine is more associated with Havdallah than it is to Kiddush. Because Kiddush, if you want to, you can make it on bread. Havdallah has to be made on wine, or a lesser version of wine if you're drinking beer. But beer is a knockoff wine. Really, Havdallah should be on wine. Havdallah, you cannot make Havdallah on bread, but you could make Havdallah you could make Kiddush on bread. And therefore, maybe I should put the wine as close as possible to Havdallah. So if I'm of the view that Havdallah has to be last, but I'm also of the view that wine has to be as close as possible to Havdallah, then what would I do? I do Kiddush first, then wine, then Havdallah. Right? This is another principle to consider. Do I put wine first because it's most common, or do I put wine closest to Havdallah? Or maybe I want to put wine as close as possible, both Kiddush and Havdallah simultaneously. It's another thing to consider. Another thing to consider is, do I want to make a separation between Kiddush and Havdallah? Or do I not care that they're next to each other? Is it like too laughable to be making Kiddush right after Havdallah? Or do I want to separate it with wine and at least the Ner, at least the candle bracha? Which is the other question. Where do I put the candle bracha? Do I put it close as possible to Havdallah because that's what's inviting the candle bracha? What's inviting the candle bracha to this process? Havdallah. Or do I want to put the candle as soon as possible?
But you could also argue that wine is also being connected to Havdallah.
That's right. So the wine is the wine connected mostly to Havdallah and therefore put it as close as possible to Havdallah? Or is the wine for all of it and therefore put it at the beginning because it's the most commonly made bracha? Or make sure it's touching both Kiddush and Havdallah? Right? So each of these things have a question. Kiddush, Havdallah first, where to put wine? And then the other question about the candle. Where should the candle go? Should the candle be closest to Havdallah because that's what's bringing the candle here? What's bringing the candle bracha here? Not the Kiddush. It's Havdallah bringing the candle here. Why am I making the bracha by Meorei Haeish now? Not because of Kiddush, but because of Havdallah. Okay, so make it close as possible to Havdallah. Or on a regular Motzei Shabbos, why do I do the bracha on the candle before the Havdallah? Well, first of all, because I want to push on Havdallah as much as possible because I don't want to make as if Shabbos is a burden. But also because actually the candle is the first thing you enjoy. As soon as Shabbos is over, you enjoy light. So you make candle right away.
But you enjoy the Besamim before.
Okay, we do something before because we don't want our neshama to feel bad.
Oh.
Right? But really Havdallah.
Really in those days.
But there is an opinion that puts Havdallah after that puts the candle bracha that puts the candle bracha after the wine. After the Havdallah.
After the Havdallah.
Yes, but we put it before the Havdallah because you enjoy of the wine first. Of the candle first. If that's the case, then maybe here also I should put the candle at the beginning because I'm enjoying it first. Even before the wine, maybe. Or certainly before the Kiddush.
There's another argument because you're associating the wine to the Havdallah.
Yeah.
But technically the Havdallah, you don't even drink the wine, like you said.
No, well, the person making the bracha drinks the wine.
The person making
yes, not everybody else, but the person making the bracha, right? So all of these questions come in, and depending on where you stand on all these questions, you have a very different order in all these different things.
And it's hard to conceptualize this because what we have in our mindset, what we actually practice today.
That's right.
As you said, you have to reverse.
That's right. That's right.
And it's hard also because in both Kiddush and Havdallah, you're holding a cup of wine.
That's right.
So it's hard to imagine what's happening here.
Yeah. So these are all the principles. Maybe I'm missing some. We'll see as we go along.
Yeah. Scenario that may be weird to compare, but how do you say God forbid? When oh my God. God forbid, funeral, someone's passed or whatever. Yeah. So that's, you consider like the ending. Usually that takes priority over a simcha, no? If you have both.
Right, so that's one thing to consider.
So then the ending of that Havdallah could be seen as like it's an ending, and then the new Chag is a simcha. So usually you close out with.
That's one way of thinking. So one way of thinking is exactly. So the example the Gemara gives, which I mentioned earlier, is if you're visiting a king and then you're being visited by a minister. You don't invite the minister in while the king is still sitting there.
Right.
You first go to the king, walk him to the door, say thank you for coming, and then invite the minister in. So first you go to the door, make Havdallah, say thank you, Shabbos, for coming, close it out, and then bring up Kiddush. The other thinking is, well, put Havdallah last because you don't want to make as if Shabbos, you're trying to get rid of it. Right? So all these different principles come together to give you different orders. So let's go through all of them and see how we can apply the different principles that undergird their view. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Oh, the last thing we have to consider is the dispute of where Shehechiyanu belongs. Right? One way of thinking is Shehechiyanu is associated with Kiddush, it's got to be said right after Kiddush. Or Shehechiyanu is actually unrelated to this whole process because Shehechiyanu is just thanking Hashem for arriving at the day. In theory, you could be walking down the market and remember, hey, it's Shabbos. or it's Yom Tov, make Shehechiyanu and thank Hashem for the day. It doesn't have to be done with the cup, and therefore put it at the end, which is the way we do. Or put Shehechiyanu right next to Kiddush, because it's the new day that's bringing you the Shehechiyanu, and therefore when you bless the new day of Kiddush, then make Shehechiyanu. Okay, but we'll put the Shehechiyanu question aside, and our question now is the question of, is Kiddush or Havdallah first? Which one is first? The two ways of thinking about that. Wine, is wine first because it's the most common, or should wine be connected to that which is most associated, namely Havdallah? And then the candle, should candle be first because you're enjoying it first, or should it be next to Havdallah because that's what's most associated with it? And then, depending on their variation, am I allowed to make Kiddush and Havdallah, or do I have to put a separation? How much of a separation? So let's go through it. Yeah, these are all the principles to think about. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot. Yeah. So it's all from memory. I hope I don't forget the details because there's so many. Okay, so Gufa. On this very subject of combining Kiddush and Havdallah. Yom Tov Shechalis b'Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos. Sorry, Yom Tov Shechalis Achar Shabbos, second to last line of Kuf Beis Amud Beis, 102b. When Yom Tov falls on a Saturday night after Shabbos. So I have now in front of me Havdallah that I have to make on Shabbos, and Kiddush that I have to make on the Yom Tov that's about to begin. Yeah, the first Seder night is Saturday night. Well, let's not use the Seder because we're putting away Shehechiyanu. Let's say it's the last night of Pesach, which is the only Yom Tov you don't make Shehechiyanu. Right now we're shelving Shehechiyanu for now. Okay, so it's the seventh night of Pesach, first of the last days, and it's Saturday night. So you have to make Havdallah on Shabbos and Kiddush on Yom Tov. So Rav Amar, Yayin, YAKNEHAZ. You see the Yud, Kuf, Nun, Hey. Yayin comes first. Wine comes first because it's the most commonly made bracha, and therefore comes first. Kiddush comes next. Kiddush before Havdallah, because in Rav's view, you don't want to make as if Shabbos is a burden. So you're pushing off Havdallah to the end. So Kiddush comes before Havdallah, and therefore you make the candle bracha, because on every Friday, Motzei Shabbos, you put candle before Havdallah, Ner, and then you make Havdallah. Yeah. Now, Shmuel says, I agree with you that Yayin comes first, wine comes first, because it's the most commonly made bracha. But in my view, Havdallah comes before Kiddush. Because in my view, first close out the day, and then invite the new day. Now, when you make Havdallah on a regular Saturday night, which one comes first, Havdallah or candle? Candle. And therefore, Yayin, wine comes first because it's the most common. Then you make then you make the candle on Havdallah, because in my view, Havdallah comes first, and the candle is right directly associated with Havdallah, so you do it there. And then last is Kiddush. So in his view, Shmuel's view, it's Yinhak, Yayin, Ner, Havdallah, Kiddush. See? And the last word on the previous page. Last word on the previous page. Oh. Yeah? Yayin, Ner, Havdallah, Kiddush. Because in his view, Havdallah comes before Kiddush, because first close out the day, then invite the new day. Wine comes first because it's the most commonly made bracha, and then the candle is associated with Havdallah. We clear so far? So the main dispute between Rav and Shmuel here is, which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah? They both agree that candle comes right before Havdallah. They both agree that wine is first because it's the most commonly made bracha. Right? Look at these two views in the bottom of Kuf Beis Amud Beis. They both agree that wine comes first because it's the most commonly made bracha. They both agree that candle comes right before Havdallah because that's the association, candle Havdallah. The question is, which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah? In Rav's view, Kiddush first because you want to push Havdallah off till as much as possible later, and therefore Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdallah. In Shmuel's view, no. First close out the day, then begin the new day, and therefore Yayin, Ner, Havdallah, Kiddush. See it? Yeah. So their only dispute here is which one's first, Havdallah or Kiddush. Everything else they agree.
Havdallah, you include also the Ner, because the order of the Ner also changes.
But that's right, because the Ner is both of them agree, exactly. Both of them agree that Ner is attached to Havdallah. So just a question of Havdallah first or Kiddush first?
Does it matter if the Ner is before or after Havdallah?
It has to be before Havdallah, just like it is every Friday night, every Motzei Shabbos before Havdallah. Because you enjoy the candle first, and therefore both agree that the candle comes right before Havdallah. So here in Rav Shmuel's view, the only question is which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah. Okay. Everything else they agree. See?
It's also weird though if you think about it, because then you're lighting fire before it's technically out, before you took it out on Saturday night.
Okay, so on Shabbos is over technically.
You say it in Shul. You say that.
And you already made Havdallah in your davening.
Okay.
Right, but you just didn't make the Havdallah in the cup yet. So you're already allowed to light a candle. Okay. So Rav and Shmuel agree on everything with the exception of which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah. Okay, not top of Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph. Rabba Amar, some switch the order, some switch Levi to Rabba, but that's not relevant to us because that's inviting other Gemaras.
opening up another.
Yeah. No, just a question of elsewhere it has Rabbah and Levi disagreeing on a different order. But to us, it's not relevant. Okay. So Rabbah says, Yehanak. Third word on Kuf Gimel Mud Aleph. Yayin. So he agrees wine comes first.
They both agree wine.
Everybody agrees wine. One second, not Levi yet. Levi puts the wine in the middle. Rabbah says wine comes first. I agree. Most commonly made bracha. And I agree with Shmuel that Havdallah comes before Kiddush. First close out the day, and then invite the new day. But he puts the candle not before Havdallah, but after Havdallah. Why? Because in his view, it's not appropriate to make Kiddush and Havdallah right next to each other. They seem too contradictory. So make a break. But a break with what? I can't make a break with wine because the wine's got to be first because it's the most commonly made bracha. So I'll make the break with Havdallah, with the candle, with the nair. So in other words, so he agrees with Rav and Shmuel that wine comes first because it's the most commonly made bracha. He agrees with Shmuel that Havdallah comes first, but he doesn't want to have Havdallah and Kiddush right next to each other. It's too contradictory. Put nair in the middle. See, so it's Yayin, Havdallah, nair, Kiddush. Yeah.
You're like using the candle then.
Oh, just inverting the order of the nair.
That's right. Just with Shmuel, just inverting the order of the nair because he wants to make a separation between Havdallah and Kiddush. Yeah. Levi says, Kiniya, Kiddush, Ner, Yayin, Havdallah. Okay, why is that? He's of the view that, like Rav, that Kiddush comes first because you want to make Havdallah as late as possible. Now, he's not concerned with wine being first. He's not concerned with the fact that wine's most common because in his view, wine is most associated with Havdallah. Why is it most associated with Havdallah? Because as I mentioned, in theory, you can make Kiddush on bread. And if you put wine at the beginning, it would be so far away from Havdallah, it wouldn't even seem like you're making Havdallah on wine, even though you're holding the cup. But the bracha is so far away from between the wine and Havdallah that it's uncomfortable for Levi. And therefore he says, okay, put the wine next to Havdallah.
Trying to make everybody happy here.
Right. Put the wine next to Havdallah. Now, on a regular Motzei Shabbos, where the only thing here is Havdallah, so even though you're making first the wine, then the nair, then the Havdallah, it's clear that your wine is connected to Havdallah because there's nothing else here. But on Motzei Shabbos, where you have Kiddush, if you were to make Kiddush, then wine, then Havdallah, then nair, then Havdallah, it would seem as if the wine is connected to Kiddush more than Havdallah. And therefore, put the wine next to Havdallah.
This is all if you have one cup.
We already established yesterday that Havdallah and Kiddush, because they're the same message, you do make it on one cup. Even if you have more available, you only make it on one cup Kiddush and Havdallah. Question now, which is the order?
Even if you have more wine available.
Yeah, even if you have more wine available, Kiddush and Havdallah on one cup together.
This is back then or now?
Even now. We're going to get to that halacha in the Shulchan Aruch.
When you're talking about Kiddush, sorry, you mean the Kiddush to like bring in the holiday.
That's right? Which is Saturday night.
Which is after
Shabbat. That's correct. No, it's one. It's in one.
Supposed to be one.
It's one. Yes, together. It's supposed to be on one cup, not two cups.
Oh, so technically, if
even if you had more wine available, so we do this. We when the Seder night, the Saturday night, we do this.
So if I do, let's say, I do Havdallah. Usually, I do it in the kitchen on like a counter cutting board, like a handle. Do Havdallah, and then I go, let's say, to the dining room and do Kiddush to bring in the holiday. That's not.
When would someone do that? No.
You're supposed to do it all in one.
We do it. This is still today. We're going to learn the halacha, but this is still today. Okay, so let's again, Levi. Levi's of the view that Kiddush comes before Havdallah like Rav, because in his view, Havdallah goes last because you don't want to make as if Shabbos is a burden. But considering that wine is most associated with Havdallah, not the Kiddush, he takes the wine from the beginning and moves it right to Havdallah. And therefore Kiddush, Ner, Yayin, Havdallah. Kniya. See it? Yes? Sure, yeah?
Sorry, I don't see it.
It's the third to last word on the top line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's Kiddush, Ner, Yayin, Havdallah. He agrees with Rav that Kiddush comes first. Havdallah you push off to the end because you don't want to make as if Shabbos is a burden. But because wine is more associated with Havdallah than it is Kiddush, he takes the wine from the beginning. He's not concerned with the fact that wine is most common. And he brings the wine closest to Havdallah because that's what's most associated with the wine.
But Rav doesn't say Kiddush comes first. This is the first time we see that Kiddush comes first, no?
Rav is of the view that Kiddush comes before Havdallah,
Oh, okay.
right?
But now he's putting it first.
He's agreeing that Kiddush comes before Havdallah, but he's taking the wine away from Kiddush and bringing it to Havdallah because the wine is more associated with Havdallah than Kiddush. Because Kiddush, in theory, you can make it on bread.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was the wine before?
In Rav's view,
It was
First.
at the beginning, because it's the most commonly made bracha.
Then Kiddush, right?
Right. So again, because there's two different questions here.
Yeah,
Question
yeah,
A
yeah,
is
yeah.
which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah? And question 2 is what's the wine position? Is the wine position most common, therefore first? Or, as we're learning now from Levi, wine is associated with Havdallah. So take it from the beginning and put it next to Havdallah because that's what's most associated with.
Right.
Because Kiddush in theory can be on bread.
He said it was too far removed from
It was too far removed from Havdallah, that's right.
It was before Kiddush.
Correct. Okay, now next view. We have 2 more to do. 3 more to do.
How you keep this off?
Because the principles.
There's so many orders.
So I'm just thinking of the principles, and then when I see the letters, I know which principles apply. That's why I began with the principles. Yeah. Okay. Rabbanon say, the sages, the other colleagues there, who were by this discussion, Kiddush, Yayin, Ner, Havdallah. Okay. So he agrees that Kiddush comes before Havdallah. Clearly. Okay. Not concerned, just like Levi, he's not concerned with wine being the first because even though it's the most commonly practiced. In his view, he agrees with the sages that wine is more associated with Havdallah than it is with Kiddush. But he doesn't want to mess with the regular Saturday night order. What's the regular Saturday night order for Havdallah? Yayin Ner, Havdallah. Nothing does. So Kiddush first, like Rav, that Kiddush comes before Havdallah. And I agree that wine is more associated with Havdallah, so put the wine after Kiddush, but I don't want to mess with the regular Saturday night order. And therefore, Yayin Ner, Havdallah. Right? It's one way of thinking about it. Another that Rashbam is that he wants to make the biggest separation between Kiddush and Havdallah. That's another suggestion that the Rashbam says here is that he wants to make Kiddush and Havdallah as most far apart as possible because they're contradictory statements, really. And therefore, because one's inviting a new day and one's closing out the old day. And therefore, make as big a separation as possible. Another way to think about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Amar, master, son of Ravina, so Ravina's son, says, Nikiya, Ner, Kiddush, Yayin, Havdallah. Why? Okay, because in his view, he agrees, on the first question, which one's first, Kiddush or Havdallah? He agrees Kiddush comes first, Havdallah last. Okay, but in his view, it's not fair to Kiddush to take the wine away from it and make it associated just with Havdallah. And neither is it fair to put wine at the beginning and make it too far away from Havdallah.
So he puts it slam in the middle.
It's right. He wants the wine to be right next to the Kiddush and Havdallah to indicate that the wine is equally for Kiddush and Havdallah. And therefore, where are you going to put the candle? Either you're putting it all the way at the end or at the beginning. So put the nair right at the beginning, because as we mentioned before, the first thing you enjoy is the light. So light first, then Kiddush, then Yayin, and then Havdallah. So that way the wine is next to both the Kiddush and Havdallah, agreeing with Rav that Kiddush comes first. Okay? Another view. How many combinations? There's math behind this. When you have 4 items, how many different combinations can you make? Okay, Marta says in the name of Rabbi Shua, Ner, Yayin, Havdallah, Kiddush, Nihak. Okay, so let's think about how this goes. He agrees Havdallah comes before Kiddush.
Yeah.
Right? He agrees that Havdallah comes before Kiddush. Now, wine is most associated with Havdallah, and therefore comes right there.
And then Ner, because that's the first thing you enjoy.
And Ner, that's the first thing you enjoy. Let's see Rashi.
Here, the wine is like it's only for the
Kiddush.
Let's see. Oh, 1 second. Rashbam doesn't explain this one. Wait. No, it does. Nihiyak. Yeah. No, wait, which one is this? Is put.
Yeah, yeah.
But you'd before the Havdallah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Rashbam doesn't explain it. So we're on our own. Let's use the principles and figure it out, yeah?
Well, we said the light because it's the first thing you enjoy.
So light because it's the first thing you enjoy.
Wine is connected more to Havdallah.
Wine's connected more to Havdallah than Kiddush. And he agrees that Havdallah comes before Kiddush.
Because
Kiddush you could do not on wine.
And Kiddush you could do not on wine. That would be the principle here. Even though Rashbam doesn't explain it, but that would be the principle. Or perhaps he rejects the whole notion of wine coming first on a regular Saturday night. the whole principle that wine comes first on a Saturday night, he rejects that completely.
He's not concerned that Havdallah and Kiddush are next to each
Not concerned with that either. Right. Okay, so that would be the principles. Okay, so now let's conclude this with the halacha. Yeah, so now they have all the principles down. Okay, Shalach le'avud Shmuel Rebbe. Shmuel's father sent the following question to Rebbe being the author of the Mishnah. Rebbe Huda. Ilamdeinu Rabbeinu, instruct us, our master, our teacher. Say the Havdallah's Heich, the order of this Havdallah, what should we do? Shalach le Rebbe responded, Kach Amar Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi, Amar Mishum Aviv. Rabbi Shmuel, son of Rabbi Yosi, said the name of his father, Rabbi Yosi. Amar Mishum Rabbi Shua B'Chananya, who said the name of Rabbi Shua B'Chananya, Nehi Yak, Ner, Havdallah, Yayin, Kiddush.
Last one.
Second to last one. Right? Putting Havdallah, not second to last one actually. Is it a new one?
I think so.
We didn't have this one. You're right.
It's the first time Havdallah.
You're right. Okay, we had the other way around. We had the Nikiya. Okay, so that's right. So what's the logic here? We agree that Havdallah comes before Kiddush.
He calls off the day.
He calls off the day first, and Ner is associated with.
Remove the wine.
That's right.
Between the two.
Ner is associated with Havdallah because it comes right before Havdallah always. And you put the wine between Havdallah and Kiddush because the wine is associated with both.
It's a hybrid of
It's a hybrid of all these different things.
principles.
Yes. Okay, so Rabbi Chananya explained, what's the parable to indicate this idea, specifically that Havdallah comes before Kiddush? This was the logic that you were suggesting. Is the king is leaving, and the minister is entering. So you don't let the minister enter while the king's sitting and waiting for you. Nichna, first you accompany the king out of the chamber. Let's say you're a host, and the king comes to your house, and then next up on your guest list is the minister.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't make the king wait there and you walk off to the minister to go bring him in. No, first you accompany the minister out, close out the day. Then you go to greet the minister.
Especially what we learned after with Abraham
and wine.
Accompanying people to the door to leave.
Exactly. Yeah, we learned that in Saita, yeah, about the importance of accompanying people to the door. Yeah, but halachas don't follow this. We actually do Kiddush first. Yeah. Sorry.
No.
So my Havdallah, what's the conclusion? The Gemara it seems that this question of Shmuel isn't actually the conclusion, which seems as though that we have to imagine that this last word comes generations later, right? The Gemara is a conglomerate of conversations over time. So we must imagine that this question, my Havdallah, what's the conclusion, is way after the story.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, there's obviously been more discussion. So the Gemara asks, my Havdallah, what's the conclusion here? So Abaye says, Yakna, Yayin Kiddush, Zman, Ner Havdallah. Okay, so they agree with Rav. Abaye agrees that Kiddush comes first, before Havdallah. Wine comes way at the beginning because it's the most common. Ner is associated with Havdallah. And Zman, Shehechiyanu, thanking Hashem for the new day, comes before Havdallah because, hey, the reason why I'm thanking Hashem for the new day is because of the new day. Kiddush is for the new day. So make Shehechiyanu next to Kiddush.
But how are you referring to the new day before you finished the old day?
It's a funny thing, but we do that. We overlap because we don't want to be. Shabbos can extend it to Yom Tov.
So it's
right? Because just like a regular Saturday, you can make Havdallah late and your Shabbos can extend for an extra hour, 2, 3, right? So you can extend your Shabbos into your Yom Tov. Because it's really a higher holiness because you're keeping upon yourself more stringency. That's all you're doing when you keep Shabbos longer. That you're not going to light a new flame or whatever. Okay, so therefore he says Yayin, that always comes first because it's the most common. Next is Kiddush because Kiddush comes before Havdallah. Then Shehechiyanu, thank Hashem for the new day because you just made Kiddush, which is for the new day. Then you do the regular Havdallah process, which is Ner Havdallah.
What's Zion?
Zman, which is Shehechiyanu.
Oh, Zman.
Zman, Shehechiyanu v'kimanu l'zman hazeh, for this time, thanking Hashem for the time of the holiday. So that's associated with Kiddush because you just thank Hashem for the new day. You sanctify the new day, thank Hashem for arriving at the new day. And then you do the regular process of Havdallah, which is Ner Havdallah. Yeah. But Rav says, YAKNEHAZ, Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdallah, and then Zman. So he agrees with Abaye, which is like Rav, that Kiddush comes before Havdallah. And he agrees that wine comes first because it's the most common. So wine comes first, most common. Then comes Kiddush. Thank Hashem for the new day. Then you do the Havdallah process because you want to do Havdallah as last as possible. And the Havdallah is Ner Havdallah. But he puts the Shehechiyanu at the end. Why? The reason he puts the Shehechiyanu at the end is because Shehechiyanu isn't associated with the cup of wine I'm holding at all. Shehechiyanu is the fact that God kept me alive to enjoy this Yom Tov. And I could be making Shehechiyanu on the street. Like Yom Kippur at night. We make Shehechiyanu in shul, no wine. Just thank Hashem because that we're still alive for this Yom Tov. So because the Shehechiyanu isn't associated with the whole Kiddush process anyway, put it at the end. And that, the hilchas of the halacha is Ke Rava.
In this case,
it's the last one. This is
yes. YAKNEHAZ told this very day we do that. We're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch, God willing, on what's today's Thursday.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch, discussing this YAKNEHAZ.
Seems like in this exercise that we went through today,
yeah.
more than I think any other case that we've seen, where any of these scenarios they all are valid in their own right.
That's correct. Yeah, a bunch of principles.
So, I mean, halakhically, I don't know
why we're picking Rava.
Tells you any of them.
I mean, they all, yeah, you're right. That's great reason. And then you go, yeah, that's right. It's a great reason. But
the truth is, this is the exercise of a lot of halakhic learning.
No, for
if
sure.
you have a bunch of principles, they converge onto one case. Which one do you give precedent to?
No, but
it's often the exercise.
Highlighting that I think in this case more than I've seen in others, where it's really like any of these are.
Every combination has a valid approach. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but this is, if you realize, this goes back to the first one.
That's right.
This is Yakna, the first one.
The first one.
Shehechiyanu is if it's the first night.
Correct.
If it's a seventh night, it's just the first one.
That's correct. It's Yakna. That's right. Correct. That's right. With Rav. Rava is with Rav. So it's always Abaya with Rav. He just puts Shehechiyanu in the middle instead of at the end. He puts Shehechiyanu near Kiddush rather than at the end.
Do you think this could change in the time of
the order? It's possible because there is a Hillel and Shammai debate here, which we'll get to, God willing, after we look at Shulchan Aruch. We'll see the Hillel Shammai debate, but that's about Besamim and Ner, which we'll get to. We'll get to.
Kiddush and Havdallah.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. No.
Spiritually, what this means in terms of spiritual components.
Yeah. Okay. Have a wonderful day, Eden, and God willing, tomorrow we'll look at Shulchan Aruch, discussing this conclusion that we just made.
Thank you.
Thank you.